Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Legislative Operations and Elections. Madam Secretary, will you please call roll?
Assemblyman DeLong. Here. Assemblywoman Dickman. Here. Assemblyman De Silva. Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Here. Assemblyman Hibbets. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller. Assemblyman Cameron Miller. Here. Assemblywoman Monroe Marino. Assemblywoman Newby. Here. Assemblyman Yeager. Chair Gorlow.
And I am here. Please mark Speaker Yeager absent, excused, and everyone else present when they arrive. We do have a meeting later we have to be in our seats by 4:45, so we are going to take a recess at about 4:40 so that we can be on the floor for Senator Cortez Masto. We'll try to get through this as much as possible, but depending how fast we go, will depend if we get through all the testimony, but like I said, we may have to take a recess. So quick friendly reminder for some housekeeping. Make sure all your electronic devices are on silent or turned off. If you wish to testify, you can sign in at the door. Also make sure when you go to the table that you're pressing the microphone and state and spell your name slowly for the record. Helps with the transcription. We do expect courtesy and respect in our interactions, even though if we don't agree on each other's position. And let me be a little bit more specific about that. That means we are not calling people out, especially by name, whether it is a bill sponsor or somebody on the dais, somebody that's calling in. Please keep your remarks to the bill only. And with that, let's get started. So we're going to open up the hearing on AB 242. This measure revises provisions related to elections. We have Assemblywoman Brown May with us today, so welcome. And when you are ready, go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Tracy Brown May. I represent Assembly District 42 in Clark County. With me today to assist in presenting is Mr. Volashin and Mr. DeCara from the Secretary of State's office, as they will help us walk through some of the technical issues relative to this bill. So as we begin, it's important to note that this bill is the result of a joint interim standing committee on this committee, Legislative Operations and Elections. In its final work session on August 29th, 2022, the committee voted to draft this bill, and then the subsequent amendments will be presented that I believe you all have, the proposed conceptual amendment relative to this bill. In the Joint Interim Standing Committee Legislative Operations and Elections Bulletin 23-9, published by the Legislative Council Bureau, its final meeting identified a bill to require the county election administrators, including county clerks and election board officers, to be trained on how to operate accessible voting systems compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. In order to assist voters who have difficulty using such voting systems, require a minimum of 2 accessible voting systems at a voting site and provide for the establishment of more than 2 accessible voting systems at a voting site if deemed necessary. And then C, require ballots that are cast in person at a polling site to be cast by a voting machine. That was what the interim committee directed at its final meeting and why this bill was created. There were presentations that were delivered during that interim committee from statewide advocacy organizations which presented arguments regarding accessibility features for people with disabilities to be able to have access to voting. And so this bill is about eliminating the barriers that people with disabilities experience in voting. The ADA was passed more than 30 years ago, and we still have accessibility features that are non-compliant with those standards. If you look at this testimony table, we are not compliant with ADA standards, as a person with a physical disability would not have the capacity to push this microphone button in order to be able to come and testify. So throughout all of our systems, we have a number of barriers that many people who have physical abilities don't recognize. That's one of the reasons that this committee decided to champion accessibility in voting. Approximately 25% of the American population are people who identify as having a disability. That's all different kinds of disabilities. 25% of our population have barriers to some sort of accessibility. And so voting is a right that we all share. Access to voting is integral to our democracy. That's why this bill is here today, to address the inadequacies in accessibility for people with disabilities to be able to cast their votes. Now, the bill that was created addressed a number of issues. Existing law provided that voting at any election conducted under Title 24 of the NRS must be on printed ballots, and this bill changes that word printed to appear to allow for an electronic formatting. Sections 5, 9, and 15 of the bill prohibit the use of paper ballots when voting in person at the polls at an election in the state, and instead require that all votes cast in person at a polling place be cast using a mechanical voting system. And I'm going to let the Secretary of State's office walk you through what that actually means, because there are paper ballots that are fed into a voting mechanical machine, right? So there's accessibility there. Several sections of this bill make conforming changes to require the use of mechanical voting systems when voting in person. Sections 6 and 17 of the bill require that each polling place must have at least 2 accessible voting booths and additional voting booths if determined necessary by the county clerk or city clerk. Now, I've had the opportunity to work directly with our Secretary of State's office on multiple occasions to train people with disabilities how to use the accessibility features. We've had the Clark County voting folks come out at town hall meetings to really work with folks who have visual disabilities, access voting, hearing disabilities, that they can access voting, physical disabilities, how do you operate those machines? So it's really important that we develop accessibility in all of our voting. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the Secretary of State's wonderful personnel to walk you through some of the technicalities if you'd like, or we can take questions, whatever you prefer, Chair.
Let's go ahead and have the Secretary of State's office do their presentation first, then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Chair. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. There are 2 voting systems that are approved for use in the state of Nevada. For those of you who have used a voting system really anywhere other than Carson City or Lander County, you're familiar with the system that's created by a company called Dominion. That is a direct reporting equipment, or DRE is what we refer to it at in the election sphere. The idea behind that machine is you walk up to it, it's got a screen. When you touch, after you've checked in, you put your card into it, of course, pulls up your precinct-specific ballot, and that's how it enables you to make your choices. To the side, there's that voter verifiable paper audit trail as well to ensure that the voter can confirm that their selections have been made. But in Carson and Lander counties, they use a different system. Another system, again, also meets the EAC's federal requirements, also approved for use in the state of Nevada by the Secretary of State's office by a company called ES&S. These 2 counties use a system that's actually a ballot marking device, so a different type system than what is used elsewhere in the state. It's not a DRE. In these systems, after you check in, you're handed what essentially is a blank piece of paper. That piece of paper then goes into a machine that allows you to identify, again, your choices. Again, all of these machines are, of course, ADA compliant as required by the Help America Vote Act and numerous other federal and state laws. After making your selections, that paper ballot comes back out, and then the voter carries it over and puts it into a tabulator. The conceptual amendment that was presented really is in part just to make sure that we allow space for those counties to use that, again, EAC and Secretary of State approved system, so that those voters who are comfortable, and the clerks and registrars in those counties and other counties that are considering BMDs going forward, those ballot marking devices, are able to do so. Again, recognizing that they are absolutely ADA compliant.
Gabriel DeCare for the record. There's also a second provision. This would adjust NRS 293B that previously this was put into statute in 1975. It allowed for elections to be conducted by mechanical means. We are presenting an amendment, a conceptual amendment, that would require, it would still say may, elections may be, votes It's short. I'm just going to read it. Ballots or votes may be cast, registered, and recorded by means of a mechanical voting system, but shall be counted by means of a mechanical voting system. This is to address the issue of hand counting here in the state of Nevada. We know from studies that are both academic and practical that a machine is better at counting ballots than any group of people could be, especially when you need to follow the procedures laid out in statute and regulation. So we would like to address that with this amendment.
Thank you, Chair. That is our presentation. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Looks like we have our first question from Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Wanted to understand the reason for not allowing a hand mark ballot and hand counting. I've seen studies on both sides about that, so I'd like a little more explanation to why you're not allowing counties to do hand marked ballots and hand counting.
Thank you.
Take those as two separate questions, please.
Thank you. Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblyman.
Please go direct.
Thank you very much. Gabriel DeCaro for the record. Thank you for the question, Assemblyman. So the paper ballot provision of this bill, as the Assemblywoman said, that was brought by the interim committee. However, I can, my understanding, again, based on the minutes of those meetings and from meetings with folks who were present, that it was to address the potential inequality in if a county was to attempt to require a majority of the election to be conducted in that way. It would, for example, require an individual to identify themselves as having a disability to be able to use one of the machines. So in terms of the paper ballot, I think that a lot of that conversation happened at the interim committee. I will say also that, again, Nevada is now a universal mail state, so for voting. So if an individual wanted to mark their ballot by hand, they will have one sent to them, as is currently in statute, and then could bring that in, either put it in the mail or bring that into a ballot drop box. Regarding hand counting, it is and Secretary of State Aguilar could not be with us today, unfortunately, but it is his opinion, it is my opinion, it is the opinion of a number of subject matter experts that hand counting will always be less accurate than counting by mechanical tabulation. We understand that some counties, it may be their desire to count ballots by hand. However, the Secretary of State is responsible for overseeing the conduct of elections. This body is responsible for passing the statute that is how we conduct our elections. And we believe that in order for Nevada's elections to remain as trusted as they are, to have the same high standard of accuracy and security, that means counting ballots mechanically and not by hand. There are issues of timeliness. We know from having several conversations with members of this body and from the public that they would really love to have results on election night. Whenever counties want to count ballots by hand, that's just not feasible, even for some of our smaller counties. So we would like to just, again, require the means that are safe, secure, accurate, and fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a question from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for the bill presentation. On the front end, though, when someone who has a disability comes in to vote, and it's been a while since I've set these machines up, but I seem to recall that there was a sip and puff type of attachment that could be used on these machines. Could you talk a little bit about that and about, or if there are other ways that help facilitate someone to be able to vote on a machine who has a disability of some sort?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. Mark Voloshin for the record. The ADA compliant aspects of the machines across the state are fairly numerous, and you're absolutely right to identify the sip and puff as being one of those options. There's additional accessibility features that allow everything from reading of the ballot and the ballot questions to the ability to see more clearly. And additionally, too, again, our clerks and registrars across the state go out of their way to make sure that when they set up their in-person voting locations to allow for the accessibility piece, the polling locations must be ADA compliant and accessible in a way that best supports and enables voters across the state to be able to show up, to comfortably move into the building, to get in line, to check in, and to cast their ballot without any concerns or limitations. So again, to be more specific, the sip and puff, there's reading for visually impaired individuals. There's also, I believe, Zoom aspects as well for a number. And there's also new standards that are coming out as well in the coming years for increased accessibility as well that are going to continue to benefit voters across our state.
I believe Assemblyman DeLong. Does anyone else have a question before I go to DeLong for a second one? Assemblywoman Moreno first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the end of the presentation, and thank you so much for the presentation, but at the end of the presentation, you spoke about amendment. Is it this amendment that we have in front of us? Okay, and could you restate, you said there was a may and a shall, and is that part of the NRS 293B.050? Is that the portion we were just?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. Yes, ma'am. Current statute. Yes, Gabriel DeCara for the record. Thank you very much, Assemblywoman. Current statute says ballots may be counted by mechanical means. Our proposed amendment would change that may just for the counting of ballots to a shall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have another one later.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. What is sip and puff?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Mark Voloshin for the record. It's an ADA tool that enables individuals who are paralyzed, as I understand, to be able to manipulate a menu system to be able to cast their ballot.
Thank you. I'm sure you're not the only one who is curious about that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I guess my question is, have these rules been left up to the counties in the past to do what they think is best? Or have we always been under state rules?
Assemblywoman Brown May for the record. Thank you for the question. So first and foremost, it's about ADA compliance and accessibility for people with disabilities before we get into the counties. And there are lots of times that we think that we have complied with ADA law that we still haven't, right? So accessibility, we still experience. Yesterday in this building was a great example of the barriers that we don't recognize as existing if we don't have disabilities. We had the deaf contingent here. And in that deaf contingent, we had an American Sign Language interpreter that was doing a presentation in 3100. And yet there are barriers in 3100 that you can't see through. And so the sign language interpreter was not visual. They weren't visible to the person. So there was no communication. Then there are people who read lips, and that's their form of communication. On the Senate floor yesterday, the glass barriers created a glare, and they were not able to read lips, or a person was not facing them, so there was no communication, right? So there are things that we think we've done to improve accessibility for people that we haven't. And so the first part of this bill, and the reason that the interim committee addressed it, was to really ensure accessibility for people with disabilities. Now I'll let Mr. Woloshin follow up on that. Thank you for the question.
In regards to the historic decision-making, Mark Voloshin for the record. Excuse me. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. In regards to the historic decision-making at the county level, there was and continues to be a number of decisions that the counties, the clerks, registrars, and their commissioners are are and will continue to make going forward as it relates to the conduct of voting inside the county. In regards to this specifically, again, without getting into too much of a history lesson, the trajectory has been since really the passage of the 2002 Help America Vote Act as a result directly of the Bush v. Gore court case to make standards and continue to improve upon those, specifically for the good of the electorate. These decisions and ultimately some of the proposed changes in this conceptual amendment speak to that, I think, and make sure that the trajectory that we continue to be on is one that embraces improvement and isn't one that is going to potentially disenfranchise large portions of our electorate through unfortunate reactions to incorrect information.
Gabriel DeCare for the record as well, Assemblywoman. I just want to add that I think that, it is a matter of record that there were counties here in the state of Nevada that wanted to move to counting their ballots by hand. I was not at the Secretary of State's office at the time. My understanding of that process from a state level, a county and local level is that was a very challenging process. The fact of the matter is that there are no problems with counting ballots by mechanical means. Ballot tabulators are accurate. I understand that there may be some individuals who would prefer to be able to verify that by their own methods potentially, but the goal of conducting an election is to, as Deputy Voloshin said, is to understand and respect the voice of the voters and what the voters want. And we want to remove any barriers that would potentially either delay or affect in any way the voters having that voice.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My follow-up is actually addressing the disability portion. So, are there different machines for disabled people? Do we have to buy different machines for our counties so that each voting place has two? Does every polling location have to have two?
So first, let me say that in Clark County, I can tell you for sure that, oh, I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Tracy Brown May for the record. Thank you for that. There are a number of accessible voting machines throughout all of Clark County, right? So that I can speak to for sure. I'll let the Secretary of State respond relative to the across the state of Nevada. They also have a number of features that come with the voting machine in order to ensure accessibility. And as you heard Mr. Voloshin state earlier, there are the sip and puff, you have the audio plug-in. You can also have a person assist you with that process. We have Zooms for low vision. So there are accessible machines. Part of this bill requires that a minimum of 2 accessible voting machines at voting sites be provided for, or the establishment of additional voting machines if deemed necessary. 2, so 2 accessible voting machines. Now, any person can use an accessible voting machine. You have to have an accessible voting machine at each site. I'll let the Secretary of State follow up.
Mark Voloshin for the record. The Assemblywoman hit it right on the head, and that's exactly right. The machines, there's some capability differences, but this would not require a massive purchase of machines across the entirety of the state. Reality is that many voting locations already have more than one, specifically to accommodate voters. And again, each clerk and registrar knows their electorate, understands their needs, and does everything in their power to be able to meet their needs so that they can take part in this extremely important civic duty.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Oh, you have a comment? Please, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I had a question. It was about Section 6 and Section 17, but my colleague, I believe, asked it, and you answered it. Every voting location will have at least 2 accessible machines. But if the clerk in that county deems that a location within that county has a greater need for more than 2 machines, he or she could get that. And there's not, right now in the state, we have enough machines to accommodate that because we've done elections before. It's not something new, correct?
Yes, Assemblywoman Gabriel DeCare for the record. That is correct. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
And last question. With the mechanical voting machines, I'm anticipating what some people are going to come up when they ask questions. Have we found that there's been any fraudulent use of those machines? Have you had any problems with the tabulations and counting those ballots in any of our recent election cycles?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Gabriel DeCaro, for the record. First and foremost, no, there is no evidence of any widespread voter or ballot fraud here in the state of Nevada or anywhere else in the country, for that matter. That's not to say that I'm not going to say that that every system is perfect. However, as you've said, Nevada has conducted elections before. Our county clerks and registrars know what they're doing. They understand the use of these machines. We will say that the vendors are partners at the federal level. Everyone wants these elections to go smoothly, and so the number of tests and quality control measures that come into play whenever you're dealing with a machine that affects our elections or helps with the conduct of our elections is really incredible.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Assemblyman DeLong. Excuse me, not DeLong, sorry, Hibbets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, and I apologize, I didn't realize this earlier. The amendment, specifically the top portion of the amendment here says it's in reference to Section 5. And that makes sense to me, but when I go further back, Section 15 has pretty much the same language, but does not show to be amended by the amendment. So my question is the intent of the amendment in order to amend all of the sections that have this language, or just Section 5?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Mark Washington, for the record. You are correct. It is both sections. 293 is mirrored almost exactly in 293C, which relates specifically to city elections, and that's what Section 15 covers. But you are correct, and the conceptual amendment will align across the bill.
Thank you for the clarification, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, one more. Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence of me. So my question is, you talked about one of the reasons for this is that the people want fast election results, but we didn't have that in our last election. Was that a result of paper ballots somewhere, or how is this going to improve that?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Gabriel DeCaro, for the record. So I will say that Secretary Aguilar is making it a priority across the Elections Division to do whatever we can do to assist the counties with speeding up that process. It is not as fast as we would like, and we think there's things we could do to make it better. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree. Obviously, that was not all only due to paper ballots and hand counting, for example. The largest county that conducted a hand count, 9 County, they also, they counted their results using means of mechanical tabulation first. That the official results came from that count. If we would have relied on the hand count, however, it would have been days before there were any results from the county. And so we would want to, again, this is something that we want to encourage and increase accuracy across the board.
Thank you. Looking forward to those improvements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Last call for questions. Okay, seeing none, we're kind of at a conundrum because we have to get downstairs. So I think at this point, I'm going to recess, and we'll come and do the support, neutral, and opposition testimony after we're done with Senator Cortez Masso's presentation. So with that, we are in recess.
you can tell. If it says Brittany on it. All of them. If it has
Welcome back, everyone. I believe when we left off, we were on support for AB 242. So if anyone would like to come to the table in support of AB 242, please come forward now. Again, don't forget to turn the microphone on and speak and spell your name slowly for the record. And you may begin when ready.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Doug Goodman, Doug-Goodman. I'm founder, executive director of Nevadans for Election Reform. I'd like to thank the interim Joint Committee on Legislative Operations for bringing this bill forward. We all agree that our elections must be administered in the most efficient manner possible. To ensure statewide efficiency, standardization of process and procedures are critical. This is true for any process in any organization. The importance of standardization has been upheld by this body with the funding for implementation of the top-down voter registration project. The importance of standardization is also strengthened by the introduction of Senate Bill 54 this session that will allow the Secretary of State to develop, with the input of all stakeholders, standardized procedures for election administration in the counties. AB 242 in no way impacts voters choosing to use the mail ballot to vote. Those who do not trust the voting machines can use the mail ballot, which is a paper ballot, and drop off at the polling location if they want to be sure their vote is collected. The ballot can even be completed at the polling location. There are those who will say that AB 242 violates county autonomy. This would be true if Nevada were a home rule state. However, Nevada is a Dillon's rule state. City and county governments only have as much power as the state legislature is willing to cede to them. Changing this is another bill for another issue. Efficiency in election administration is paramount. By further standardizing the voting process in Nevada, the legislature will be taking a major step in ensuring Nevada maintains its leading role in election administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You may begin when ready.
Good evening, Chairwoman and committee members. For the record, Emily Prasad Zamora, Executive Director of Silver State Voices. I know it's been a long day, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We stand in strong support in any bill that we feel expands access to a particular community who doesn't feel heard and seen. The electoral process is a bill that we can support, so we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to come to the table in support of AB 242? Okay, seeing no one, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Seeing no one. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the telephone in support of AB 242?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 242, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, and Chair and members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'll try and be super quick today. There is an estimated 775,000 adults in Nevada who have a disability. This equals 1 in 3, or 32% of Nevada's population. And if you take a look at the people on this committee, that's roughly 4 people that you're sitting around. A little over 750,000 people can potentially be impacted by a change to the current voting laws. And remember that the disability population is the only minority group that you are 1 second away from being a member of. So please keep that in mind when you make this decision. You're making one that may impact someone that you love or potentially yourself today. In the 2020 election, 59.7% of people with disabilities in Nevada exercised their right to vote, and 1 in 9 voters encountered difficulties. Providing equal access to all individuals with disabilities is the key element of the Rehab Act of '73 and the ADA. And the ADA provides a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities, requiring state and local governments that communicate as effectively with people who have disabilities as someone without. When you create a universal polling place, you must design it in such a way that people with disabilities can independently vote in privacy. This is the foundation to the freedoms in America as stated in the First and 14th Amendments. And accessibility involves much more than providing ramps. It's about a key element of inclusion and the baseline of equal service. Accessibility refers to the design of environments, products, and services that facilitate access for people with disabilities to the same level of access, independence, and privacy as anyone else. Ensuring effective access to information and services isn't only about meeting legal requirements or satisfying a policy checklist. It's about constantly striving to expand meaningful participation for all. Universal accessibility creates a world that does not separate anyone based on their abilities. The fundamental problem is that voters with disabilities are being offered a separate but equal approach to voting, and as such, separate is not equal. We really appreciate your time today and appreciate the Assemblywoman's work on this bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I am Dayla Gibson, DAELA-GIBSON. I'm here on behalf of Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Eric Cheng, ERICJENG, here on behalf of One API in Nevada and our partner organization, Asian Community Development Council, and we are in full support of this bill. Thank you so much for sponsoring. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close testimony in support of AB 242 and we'll move on to opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to testify in opposition of 242? Thank you very much. You know the drill. Press the microphone, speak and state your name slowly for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Committee, my name is Lynn Chapman, and I'm State Treasurer of the Independent American Party. And there are good things in this bill, which I'm glad to see, helping the disabled. That's important, and I'm glad to see that would, there's something in here for them. I also got the conceptual amendment, and number 3 on the amendment, it wasn't really clear to me in the bill, but it shows that if you have a ballot that was mailed to you and you filled it out, you can go to the registrar's office or a drop box and put it in there, and that would be okay, because I was wondering about that, but that's taken care of, so that was answered. And the reason why I don't trust machines, the machines aren't 100% trustworthy. Back in 2012, when I was trying to vote for president, I watched the machine change my vote, not once, not twice, but 3 times, right in front of my face. I asked to be moved off of that machine. It needed to be taken out because it was changing my vote. They put me on another machine. I turned around and they were still having people vote on that machine, which was wrong. And I believe that a lot of people do like the paper ballots, and I'm not in favor of doing away with the paper ballots. At the local counties and cities should have options under our state election laws to conduct their own elections, because everybody in different counties, there are different sizes, different things going on in each county. So those are some of the reasons, good and bad. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chapman. You may begin when ready.
Good evening, Joy Trushinsky, TRUSHENSKI, for the record. I strongly oppose AB 242 because it usurps the power of county election officials to determine how elections are run. It prohibits the use of paper ballots at all voting locations except for mail-in ballots delivered to the location. Nevada has used paper ballots in one way or another for decades. Nye and Lander County officials should be applauded, not punished, for the use of paper ballots in the 2022 midterms. The Dominion voting machines used in most of the Nevada counties can be hacked, have been hacked, and they do not produce a paper receipt which could be used to verify the true votes in elections. A paper trail is essential to make sure we have fair and honest elections. Please vote no on AB 242 and allow local governments to decide how their elections will be conducted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. You may begin when ready, sir.
Thank you. Richard Nagel for the record and AGEL. I'm opposed to this bill, but I would like to see some things added to it. As a poll worker, I found a lot of people that came up there, not a lot, but few people that came up that had ALS, that had a hard time writing their signature, and your signature is your identification as a poll worker. It would be nice if they were being allowed to use their driver's license or a form of state ID when they, again, after the sixth attempt to make it as a signature, it's kind of humiliating for somebody like that. And I think that we should have some kindnesses for them and allow them to use an alternative form of ID. That, again, just to stop that. The other thing is that the paper ballots, I'm against not using them. I think that should be an option. I never think we should. In Carson City, we had a marker where you got your ballot and you put it in the machine. That was paper. And then you marked it on the machine and it printed out. You looked at it, you verified it, you put it in the tabulator. To me, the dumb machines worked really great. It gave people confidence in the election. And the other thing I'd like to say is that people, regardless of party, would come up and show me their driver's license, their identification. Democrats showed it to me, Republicans showed it to me, and independents showed it to me. Again, we should be able to use some alternative form of ID, and a driver's license would be perfect for that. Thank you much.
Thank you, and you can begin when ready.
Betsy Strasburg, Strasburg. I was a poll worker in the last two elections, primary and general. I love our process in Carson City. It was implemented by a clerk recorder, which is a ballot marking machine plus a dumb tabulator. Less regulations and less mandates is what I'm striving for. I fully support local clerks to do what their constituents want, since we have an elected clerk. If the body wants to improve things, as I think the Secretary of State does too, then please make sure that we have adequate receipting of people's vote, whether you use a DRE or a ballot marking machine. When you go to an ATM machine, you get a receipt. You don't walk away without getting a receipt. The mechanical device will improve counting. Then let's make sure that reporting goes along with it. I can't tell you how many times I've called Secretary of State to ask for a data, and then they told me to go to the clerk's office and vice versa. There is insufficient audit procedures to certify the tabulator machine or the voting machine. I saw the checklist the gaming board uses to certify the tabulator machine, but our local clerk recorder, who is a veteran, 25 years plus, could not tell me what each of the items were checking. This is inadequate from an audit perspective and from my audit experience. I urge the sponsor to include these refinements. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please go ahead when ready.
Hi, I'm Lori Johnson, LORIJOHNSON. I'm against this bill. I believe that voting machines don't work. They're too easily corrupt. We should have a paper trail to count our votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please go ahead when ready.
Thank you for hearing us. AB 242 mandates machine votes if you're voting in person. This is wrong and potentially very dangerous.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, can you state your name for the record?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just.
We all do it.
Again, I thought I'm going to remember. Barbara Jones,
Thank
for the
you.
record.
Thank you.
you, ma'am. They're potentially very, very dangerous for two reasons. First, it puts voter information in a database. The database can be shared, and this is all in black and white on the legislative website, the Secretary of State's website. The database can be shared with any group. The vendor example for the children's data a few years ago was sold to China, so they have in code the information on their kids for a number of years, the kids in Nevada. The international group Gardner counseled Nevada to pass the VREMS. It's VREMS, it's on the website, and this bill is part of putting that in place, and it's to be implemented in the third phase this year. And I researched Gardner. They're an international company. Why do we have to put our voter information to an international company? They sold. The project is going to cost $3 million for the third phase, which is to be completed this year. This was passed in the last session. Other bills help implement it. Besides this bill, the vendor is called KNOWINK. Really, we've got to get out of this international mess. I researched names. I even finally, again, got down to a China connection. The vendor is Knowink, KNOWINK. Following that, it may be for sale. It already says it on the website. With names I checked, they're international. Top down, counties lose control. Funding by the federal HAVA grant, partially. And I heard somebody from the Secretary of State's office that was in this room told me, I guarantee there's no funding from the federal government. Okay? And this
your
is all
time
on
is
the
up.
website.
Ma'am, your 2 minutes are up, but if you'd like, you can submit your written testimony to the secretary, and she
Okay.
can submit it, okay?
Thank you.
Thank
I
you very much.
took longer.
That's okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, they were manipulated too. 3 times my vote.
And please turn off her microphone just because they'll get feedback.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. You may begin when ready.
Hi, my name is Julie Burke, that's B-U-R-K-E, and I am glad that you're addressing the ADA issue because that is important, but I don't believe enough facts have been presented to change the whole entire system. And I do know that the voting machines are not trustworthy. They're subject to be hacked. The algorithms can be set to create fraudulent elections, and being securely offline is questionable. There seems to be no desire by the state to conduct the needed investigations and prove to put these voting machines concerned to rest and restore confidence. The dependency on an unvetted third-party machine vendor to be the experts regarding the functionality and accuracy of the machines is questionable. Having to have the third-party vendor experts stand by or be present during the election for machine guidance should give more than rise for concern, and I did see that at the monitoring the last election. It appears we know little about the machines and their actual performance. Given the above statements, I would say a voting machine or vendor that has been approved by the state of Nevada and meets or exceeds the federal standards for voting systems is still questionable and unvetted if there is unwillingness to investigate, be transparent, and provide proof the machines are free of all allegations asserted. A machine is only as good as those programming or hacking it. Paper ballots are easily to physically see the votes and be assured the votes are legal and properly cast when standards are in place and followed. The same cannot be said for machines. For these and many other reasons, I believe you can address the ADA concerns without changing the entire current system. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Madam Chairman, Committee, it's Michael Lobby, last name is L-A, capital B-I-T. This is a first for me to speak to a body like this, so bear with me. I wanted to talk to you today about this bill and about the perception. And perception is the really focus area, because whether things are real or not, doesn't matter. It's how the people perceive them. What do they think? And as accurate as our Secretary of State's office may be with our elections, we have a perception problem in this state. You talk to the people that are your neighbors, you talk to the people that you meet in a grocery store, and they will tell you that they do not trust our system. So how do we get the trust back? Well, the bill that we have before us today is really one that has two parts. It has a part that deals with ADA. And quite honestly, the first time I read this bill, that is all I saw. It wasn't until 3 weeks later when I read it again and I saw that there was the elimination of paper ballots. And that is a big deal, because it's a big deal in the way in which it will be perceived by the public, the people that don't trust us right now. And we have to rely on that trust. We have to get it back. If there's anything that you can do to keep the ADA portion of the bill, but to remain with the ability to have paper ballots at the polling stations, we need to do it. The way that this bill will be interpreted by the public, I can tell you, is that the majority party is forcing us, the people, to use machines that we don't trust. That is the perception that they will have. And you don't want that. I don't want that. We have a good system in this state, and we need to support it, and we need to rebuild the trust. Now is not the time to eliminate a paper ballot. Let's get the trust back in our system and then come back later and do something like this if it's really that important. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to come to the table in opposition of AB 242? Okay, seeing none, we will go to Las Vegas. Please make sure to turn on the microphone, state and spell your name slowly for the record, and you've got 2 minutes each. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mark Kampf, Nye County Clerk, KAMPF. In 2022, Nye County made the decision to use paper ballots when voting in person at the polls. In 2020, the state of Nevada implemented universal mail-in ballots. By 2022 midterm, 68% of the voters in our county used a paper mail-in ballot, and the remaining 32% appeared in person at the polls. Out of the 6,426 people who voted in the polls, only 249 voters used the mechanical voting system that was designated for voters with disabilities as required by the state. And I support that opportunity for those voters. The remaining 6,177 used a paper ballot, the exact same type of ballot that is sent in the mail. By implementing paper ballots at the polls, Nye County took the first step in reducing the cost to taxpayers by implementing an all-paper ballot process and eliminating the need for excess machine capacity that is a cost to taxpayers. Those voters who chose to vote in person feel strongly about exercising their right to vote at the polls. Since the voters in our county overwhelmingly support the use of all paper ballots, they should not be denied the ability to vote in the method of their choosing because they wish to exercise that right in person rather than sending their ballot through the mail, which they do not trust. In Nye County, virtually all ballots are counted using the same methodology. Both mail paper ballots and in-person paper ballots are counted using a state-approved tabulation method. The only exception is for those machines that are available for ADA compliance. This bill will ultimately cost taxpayers who will have to pay for future mechanical voting system upgrades since the existing mechanical systems are near the end of their technological life. The current systems cost over $430,000 initially, and that does not include the annual license and warranty fees of over $40,000. The use of mechanical voting systems is a costly methodology in terms of physical equipment, license, and warranty fees. The physical labor and resource to transport voting machines across the vast expanse of the 18,119 square miles that is Nye County is very difficult. For all these reasons, we strongly oppose this legislation that would be the first in the nation to make paper ballots at the polls illegal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ma'am, you can begin when ready.
Hello, my name is Susan Prophet, and I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. I'm also the lady who sued Joe Gloria for the right to have meaningful observation of the election process and had a team in there to assess their operations in the last 3 elections. So again, I'd like to offer my expertise along with a number of other people and a closet full of evidence whenever anybody wants to see it. All right. I oppose this because, and I'm a bit surprised, because there was some misinformation being given here today. And why would you write a bill that is clearly punitive against counties who chose to count ballots by hand, while many counties in California and Arizona have ditched Dominion voting machines recently? There's a lot about it in the news if you want to check it out, and not just on Fox. It is not appropriate for our legislature to discriminate against conservatives with a punitive bill like this. I really don't think it is, just because they want to count by hand. I mean, that's one step up from using a purple ink on your finger, but hey, that would work too, and it's a lot less expensive. Our teams have observed inside the register of voters every day in the last 3 elections. We saw Dominion machines hooked up to the internet in 2020 election and to the Ethernet in the 2022 election. And I have noticed that each one of the people that were at the computers doing the counting with the thumb drives had 2 phones in their pockets. When they pulled them out, there were always 2. We witnessed election fraud up close and personal. And I know you don't want to hear it, but I have the evidence, all right? Several reports came in recently at the last election about poll workers being directed to specific machines. Poll workers putting Republicans at specific machines, and that those machines were not printing out their receipt. The paper roll was blank. I also heard reports
Ma'am,
from
you're at
Republicans
2
saying
minutes. Can you
that
please
they
wrap up?
dropped off their ballots and they were counted as provisional instead on Election Day. Don't pass this, please. Don't pass it. We need fair elections.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next person, please go ahead when ready.
Hi, my name is Karen Kogelschatz. Last name is Kogelschatz. Thank you for letting me speak today. I am strong opposition to AB 242, specifically the portion of this bill that mandates the use of mechanical voting machines and prohibits the use of paper ballots except for mail-in ballots. Local counties and cities have always had options under the state election law in conducting their own elections. This bill discriminates against those local counties, such as Nye County, that have chosen to use paper ballots to cast their vote rather than the expensive alternative of voting machines. Further, this option should continue to be available to people who would prefer to use a paper ballot at the polls on Election Day rather than a machine. A person's right to vote is sacred. I've heard everyone say that. I believe that everyone would agree that we want to allow all people the ability to vote and exercise their right. By keeping paper ballots as an option, it will maintain that ability to reach all voters. Thank you for your time, and that you will consider opposing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, go ahead when ready.
Yes, thank you. My name is Leslie Quinn, and I oppose AB 242. Voting in person on the same day of election would be the most efficient and accurate way to secure the true vote and intent of the American Nevadan people. In the event of ADA, elderly, or military eligible voters, there are absentee ballots or mail-in ballots they can pick up at the library, post office, or have a ballot mailed to them. Voters have a right to their 26th, 15th, and 14th Amendment. They also have a right to their true vote, being registered as accurately as possible. I believe this is on paper ballots in person with a valid ID. Paper ballots create trust in the voters that their true vote was cast and not altered by a machine or other nefarious entity. Voters that AB 242 addresses have several options to make their vote count. As I said, mailing in their vote, having someone drop it off at a ballot box, having someone coming by their home to pick it up, as in the practice of ballot harvesting done these last 2 election cycles. In-person voting on paper ballots with a valid Nevada ID or for U.S. citizens will save Nevada hundreds of thousands of dollars from mailing ballots to inaccurate addresses or deceased voters. Let's save trees, money, and bring back trust in the vote for Nevadans. In fact, I voted on Election Day, and several of the Dominion machines were not working. My vote didn't even register accurately on the date I voted. Please oppose AB 242. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify in opposition of AB 242? Okay, seeing none. Broadcasting? Can we go to the telephones for anyone in opposition for AB 242?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 242, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams for the record, OSCAR-WILLIAMS from Reno. I'm opposed to AB 242. I take issue with the prior gentleman's comment on Dillon's rule. Nevada is a local governing state. Dillon's rule is antithetical to that and to the way of life that we know so well here. Regarding the auditory tactile interface, the ATI, and the sip and puff, I'm not aware of the statistics of the number of votes cast by either of these devices. I don't believe Washoe County provides them. Maybe Clark does, but they've certainly not provided them to me, and I would love to see them. Maybe you have them. It's great that we have sentiments to help disabled people. It's a very generic term, by the way, when we say disabled, because you got people who could be in a sanitarium. They could be just without the use of their legs. They could have bad vision. They could have a cancer. There's different levels of their ability to come to the polls or not. Counties do provide in-home voter assistance teams. All you have to do is call and ask for voter assistance to come to your house and help you vote. So when we talk about the need for all these devices and all these things, please take time to do your homework and make sure the statistics warrant those kinds of things, because I'm not sure that the evidence is really there. And of course, another way to solve some of the issues, maybe we could have more polling locations near the disabled people so they don't have to travel farther to a vote center. Because, if they don't have use of their hands and they can't see, they're not driving themselves there. They're being escorted. So they might as well have people come to their house or have a polling location that's just a little closer to them, a little easier. Those would be nice thoughts. When we talk about the statewide standard, counting and recounting ballots, we've had a problem for some time because our system is set up a dual system, in fact, where we have a tangible physical paper ballot and an intangible electronic ballot. We don't even get a paper receipt for the thing, at least not in Washoe County.
Sir, you've reached 2 minutes. Can you please wrap up?
You're killing me. Yes, ma'am. Let me say real quick, do you remember what Eric Comer, the former director of Dominion Software, once said? He said their machines are marred by, quote, critical...
Okay, sir, I'm sorry. You have gone over your 2 minutes. But if you have any testimony in writing, you can submit it to the secretary and she will upload it. So thank you very much. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Hi, my name is Lisa Partee, P as in Paul, A-R-T as in Tom, E-E. Please vote no on AB 242, which mandates the use of mechanical voting machines and prohibits the use of paper ballots except for mail-in ballots. I understand this is for ADA issues, but I saw for myself in Carson City, we had lots of people, accommodations at the voting booth for disabled people and people assisting them. And I don't believe that any counties have ADA problems. The individual counties should address them, but I don't feel we need to change laws for everyone just due to those few ADA issues. And you could say they're more accurate to count than humans, but there are people who feel differently. And we used to have an election day before we had these machines. Now, for some reason, it takes days and weeks to count the ballots. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm grateful that you removed Section 18B. I'm not sure why that was there in the first place, because it talks about removing ballots if the count isn't right, just actually physically removing ballots and not looking at them. That could be my ballot that was removed. So I'm glad that was removed. But it doesn't make sense. Why would anybody remove a record of discrepancy? So that was Section 18. That was taking away accountability to the citizens.
This is not a good bill. Please vote no on AB 242. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting. Next caller, please.
CYRUSHOJJATY. I oppose this bill. Ditto. Yield.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting. Next caller, please.
My name is Ellen Gifford, and when I read a proposed bill to formulate my opinion on it, I make every effort to understand why the bill was written, what motivated the author, what the purpose of the bill is. It states that AB 242 is to aid the elderly and disabled. I've read the bill and I see that it mandates that mechanical voting systems be used for all elections in all counties, districts, precincts, and cities across the state of Nevada. It abolishes the use of paper ballots, including provisional ballots, for all elections for all time. It fully entrenches what was supposed to be, because of COVID, a temporary emergency alternative, the vote by mail ballot, as a permanent fixture in Nevada's election process. It mandates revisions to 12 city charters in Nevada to accommodate this bill. And it withholds any financial assistance for these legislative mandated expenses, so the counties have to find a way to pay for what is in this bill. Knowing this much about the bill, I can't help but be suspicious of its purpose. Since the election process belongs to the people, I'd like to know if the author or the sponsors have had any discussions with the people. Was there any discussion about how this bill would forever change their election process? Not to mention what the projected cost would be for implementing these unsolicited mandates. I think the answer to that question has to be no, because on Nellis, the people have indicated that they do not want their election process to look the way it's described in this bill, with 98% of them opposing it. Therefore, in unison with these Nevada voters, I also oppose this bill.
Thank you very much. Broadcasting. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of this committee. My name is Alita Benson, Executive Director of the Nevada Republican Party, testifying in opposition to AB 242 on behalf of the Nevada Republican Party. In 2019, the Democrat-controlled Nevada Legislature passed into law the Voters' Bill of Rights. AB 242 is an attack on the Voters' Bill of Rights and an attack on local control. Our Democrat friends regularly invoke the importance of local control when defending irregular election practices in Clark County, such as excluding Republican observers, not following publicly posted schedules, or refusing to allow cameras to live stream the ballot counting process to the public at no cost to the government. The importance of local control over elections was used as the reason to not address each of these real-life issues. Elections are controlled by those elected officials, or appointed, in the case of Clark and Washoe, that are closest to the voters, the county clerks and registrars. AB 242 is an attack on the right of voters to determine what kind of election system they find trustworthy. Nevada's counties, like our residents, are diverse and varied. The system for Esmeralda County, with 617 registered voters, can, and perhaps should be, radically different from Clark County, with over 1.3 million active voters. That's not for this body to decide. That is for the voters in that county to decide. AB 242 attempts to disenfranchise rural voters by preventing them from directing their local county representatives to implement a voting system that they find most fair and responsive to their needs. The Voters' Bill of Rights also specifies that a voter has a right to receive and cast a ballot that accurately records the voter's preference in the selection of candidates. As demonstrated in multiple recounts in 2020 and 2022, even Clark County, when recounting the same ballots, couldn't produce the same numbers. Any reasonable person would have doubts when the same ballots run through the same machines and come out with a different number. Accordingly, some voters in their respective counties have said that they only want paper and mail ballots in order to accurately uphold NRS. This bill would disenfranchise those voters and is therefore a direct attack on the Voters' Bill of Rights. The Nevada legislature has passed laws requiring that every voter in the state be sent a paper ballot in the mail, whether they want it or not. It makes no sense for you to say that paper ballots are so awesome that every voter should have one sent to their home, but that paper ballots are so dangerous that they have to be prohibited in official polling places. Nevada's election laws and resulting inability to provide timely and transparent results are already the laughingstock of the nation. Please don't continue to embarrass us by writing further contradictory laws. Vote no on AB 242. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Laura Larson. I'm from Nye County. I was present during the time when Nye County commissioners voted for the paper ballots. I think that the county commissioners, as well as the clerk, should have the power to do our voting rights. It's against the Bill of Rights regarding the fact of integrity for our elections. I think that you should vote this down. I oppose this. It should not be happening. This is against our constitutional rights. And I pray that all of you will think about those things. This machine started coming out in 2004, and they had problems back then. The previous clerk even said that there was glitches that were happening in our the tabulator, that they had to run the ballots through multiple times. This is not okay. Paper ballots, you have a paper trail, you can see what the voter was doing, you can actually sit there and go off of what the if there was a second dot that was put in the machine or on the paper ballot, and you can see what the intent of the voter was actually doing. But also in the same token, if you had a second dot that was put in someone else, say like you had circled somebody in an election, then you've seen an extra dot in there. Well, that was tossed out. And Dominion machines are not set up correctly on the state law. So please do not vote this. Do not vote this in. Please vote this out. I oppose AB 242. And God bless you. And I hope you all make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 242, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. We will come back to Carson City for testimony in neutral. Would anybody like to provide neutral testimony? Seeing none, we will go to Las Vegas. Is there anybody in Las Vegas? Seeing none, broadcasting, do we have anybody on the telephone to testify in neutral for AB 242?
To testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 242, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. Would our bill presenter like to come up, make a few comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Tracy Brown May for the record. I appreciate your time and your energy this evening as we look at this measure. I am honored to present this bill that was crafted by this interim committee to address the issues with regard to accessibility for all of our citizens. Building equity and accessibility into all of our systems is essential, and we don't do that yet. So imagine building a building that doesn't have stairs, that provides ramps, that doesn't have doorknobs, that opens a door for you. It's a shift in how we think about what accessibility is, and until we do build all of our systems with everyone in mind, we're not going to be where we need to be. Mailed paper ballots can be dropped off at a location. They can be mailed. This ensures everyone has equal access to the vote. The previous Secretary of State noted on multiple occasions there were no instances of fraud that could be substantiated, and she did that investigation. She's on record stating that, the validity of the last election. Additionally, representatives from the Secretary of State had noted 2 types of machines are available. This bill does not identify which type of machine needs to be used in any one of our districts. There is one that does have actual paper that gets fed into a mechanical counting machine. This bill helps to ensure fair and accessible elections irrespective of a person's disability. I thank you for your consideration of this measure, and I understand you have additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Gorlow, members of the committee. Thank you very much to Assemblywoman Brown-May for presenting this bill, which would do a lot for individuals with disabilities here in the state of Nevada. I just want to address a few of the points that were made during public comment. Voting machines here in Nevada were not hacked in 2022 or any election prior. They are not hackable. They are not connected to the internet. Those things are factually inaccurate. I would also like to say that 67.9% of ballots that were returned in the 2022 general election in Nye County, that's almost 68% of ballots, were mail-in ballots. That was the highest percentage of mail-in ballot return in the state. The reason why Secretary Aguilar felt it was important to bring this provision addressing hand counting is because we believe that as election administrators, we have a duty to our voters. We want to make sure that these returns are counted accurately. Sometimes that takes time, but I can guarantee it takes a lot more time when you're trying to count by hand than it takes counting mechanically. That's why we brought this. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your patience this evening. And Gabriel DeCare for the record. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 242, and we will go to our last item on the agenda, which is public comment. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to come to the table and talk on public comment that does not have anything to do with AB 242? Okay, seeing a couple.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Chapman, and I just want to comment on, you guys have such nice little chairs, and the chairs in this room are horrible that we get stuck sitting on. And I just wanted to put that on the record. I've complained about those chairs for years. They're the worst. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And these might look comfortable, but they hurt my back too. So thank you. Please go ahead when ready.
Barbara Jones again. I just wanted to thank you very briefly, 2 things. I would urge you to please hear a bill that is protecting our kids from internet. It's regarding internet privacy. It's AB 320, and urge you to hear some of the Republican election bills that solve a lot of the problems I've seen as running a poll and also observing the elections and the account. And I just want to address 2 things. 2 people said there's no fraud. 122,000 irregularities were presented to Judge Russell, and again, like all across the country, no court date. And a lot of those were affidavits, which is 10 years in prison if you lie on an affidavit. So thank you for your time, Madam Chairman and committee. And we hope you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to let you know, it looks like that Assembly Bill 320 that you are referencing is actually in Commerce and Labor, not Ledge Ops. Okay, seeing no one else for public comment, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, broadcasting, do we have anybody on the telephone who would like to provide public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
P-Y-R-U-S, H-O-J-J-A-T-Y. The pedestrian deaths nationally and statewide are rising in alarming rates. We have to look into this. I believe the main problem is the car infrastructure design. That matters the most. And whatever it is, I think we should consider alternative ways of growing our cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Thank you, all legislators and chairwoman. I just wanted to say I appreciate all the time and energy that you spend there. I know it must be hard with all the pros and cons. I just want to respectfully ask that Assemblyman Gray's AB 230 is put on the agenda, as well as the governor's bill AB 400. And I really appreciate you always being constitutional in your support and opposition when you listen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no other callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we will close public comment. Committee members, any comments that you'd like to make?
Just thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm assuming that was directed to me. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. All right, well, with that, please be safe out there and be good to each other. We're adjourned.